Welcome to the session on Upanishads. The Upanishads form the concluding parts of the Vedas and are therefore called the Vedanta or the end of the Veda, a denomination which suggests that they contain the essence of the Vedic teaching. They are the foundations on which most of the later philosophies and religions of India rest. There is no important form of Hindu thought, heterodox Buddhism included, which is not rooted in the Upanishads. The word Upanishads is derived from the root sad, which means 1. to sit down, 2. to destroy, 3. to loosen. Upa means nearby and ni means devotedly. The word therefore means the sitting down of the disciple near his teacher in a devoted manner to receiving instruction about of the highest reality, which loosens all doubts and destroys all ignorance of the disciple. Gradually, the word came to signify any secret teaching about reality, and it is used by the Upanishads in this sense. The Muktigopanishad gives the number of the Upanishads as 108, but 10 or 11 Upanishads are regarded as important and authorities on which Shankaracharya has commented. They are as follows: Isha, Kena, Kada, Prashna, Muntaga, Mandukya, Chandogya, Brihadaranyaka, Aitareya and Taitareya. We cannot assign any exact date to them. The earliest of them are certainly pre-Buddhistic. A few of them are after Buddha. It is likely that they were composed between the completion of the Vedic hymns and the rise of Buddhism. The accepted date for the early Upanishads are 1000 BC to 300 BC. Some of the later Upanishads on which Shankara has commented are post-Buddhistic and belong to about 400 or 300 BC. About the thinkers of the Upanishads, nothing much can be said. A few like Yajnavalkya and Uddalaga figure prominently, each with a definite set of teachings influencing a group of pupils. It is not easy to decide what the Upanishads teach. The central theme of the Upanishads is the problem of philosophy. It is the search for what is true. The traditional view holds that the Upanishads as revealed teach the same doctrine, but there has been extremely wide difference in their interpretation. The problems discussed in them as well as their unique style make them liable to many interpretations. All their teachings are not equally prominent. Some are mere flashes of thought, some are only hinted at, some are slightly developed, some are mentioned by the way, while some are often repeated, emphasized and thoroughly dealt with. There is an essential unity of purpose in them. They emphasize the same fundamental doctrines, which may be called monistic idealism or idealistic monism. These poetic philosophic works are full of grand imagery, extremely charming and lucid expression abounding in crystal clarity. To the mind, they bring sound philosophical doctrines, and to the heart peace and freedom. They are full of ananda or supreme joy, out of which all things arise, by which they live and into which they return again. Passionate yearning for knowledge, restless striving after truth, and a ceaseless search for reality have found a most touching expression in them. The Upanishads develop the monistic ideas scattered in the Samhitas. During the Brahmana period, these scattered philosophical ideas were almost overlooked and emphasis was laid on merely the rigorous ritualistic sacrifices. The Aranyakas mark the shifting of the emphasis from the ritualistic to the philosophical thought, which work was completed by the Upanishad. The Upanishads tells us that the Vedas have been breathed forth from him or Brahman, but they regard the Karma Kanda as secondary, being only a help to purify the mind, by which purification one is made fit to receive the real teaching about Brahman. Thus, we find the sage Narada telling Sant Kumara, I know the Rigveda, sir, the Yaju, the Sama. With all these, I know only the mantras in the sacred book. I do not know the self. I have heard from persons like you that only he who knows the self goes beyond sorrow. The Mundaka tells us two kinds of knowledge must be known, the higher and the lower. The lower knowledge is that which the Rigveda, Sama, Atharva, ceremonial grammas give, but the higher knowledge is that by which the immortal Brahman is known. The nature of reality. Brahman and Atman are the terms used in the Upanishads to stand for the ultimate reality. It manifests itself as a subject as well as the object and transcends them both. The same reality is called from the subjective side as Atman and from the objective side as Brahman. The two terms are used as synonyms. He who is this Brahman in man and who is that in the sun, those are one. The transcendent conception of God held in the Rigveda is here transformed into an immanent one. The true self has been the main topic of investigation in the Upanishads. Atman. There are two currents of thought in the Upanishads, one aimed at discovering the primacy principle of the cosmos and the other searching for the innermost essence of man. This is found in the eternal principle behind the body and mind. It is termed Atman. The etymology of this word is observe. In the Rigveda, it means breath or the vital essence. Gradually, it acquired the meaning of soul or self and spirit. Shankaracharya quotes the verse giving the different connotations of the word Atman. The verse says that Atman means that which pervades all, which is the subject and which knows, experiences and illuminates the objects, and which remains immortal and always the same. In a dialogue between the teacher Prajapati and the pupil Indra, narrated in the Chandogya Upanishad, we find a progressive development in the definition of self through the four stages of 1. The bodily self or the waking, 2. The empirical self or the dreaming, 3. The transcendental self or deep dreamless sleep, and 4. The absolute self or Turiya. What is the nature of the self of man, his central being? The self or Atman, which is free from evil, ageless, deathless, sorrowless, hungerless, thirstless, whose desire is the real, whose conception is the real. He should be searched out, him one should desire to understand. He obtained all words and all desires, who has found out and who understands that self. The gods and the demons, the dialogue tells us, send Indra and Virojana respectively to Prajapati to learn the teaching about the self. The teacher asked them to undergo penance for 32 years to qualify themselves to receive the teaching. After fulfilling the prescribed condition, both come to Prajapati, who teaches them that the self is indeed he who is seen when you look into another's eye or a pail of water or a mirror. It is suggested that we observe a picture even to the very hairs and nails. To indicate that it is not the self, Prajapati asked Indra to adorn himself, put on the best clothes and look again into the water and the mirror, and he sees his likeness well adorned with best clothes and clean. Virojana was satisfied and went away. But Indra began to think thus: how can the self be the reflection of the body, or how can it be identified with the body itself? As this self in the shadow or the water is well adorned, when the body is well adorned, well dressed when the body is well dressed, well clean when the body is well clean, that self will also be blind if the body is blind, lame if the body is lame, crippled if the body is crippled, and perish in fact as soon as the body perishes. I see no good in this. Indra approaches his teacher Prajapati and after another long interval is told, he who moves about happy in dreams is the self. The true self is not the body which is exposed to all suffering and imperfections, which is a material phenomenon. The body is only an instrument used by consciousness, while consciousness is not the product of the body. And now Indra is told that the dreaming subject is the self, but he feels another difficulty. Though it is true that self is not rendered faulty by faults of body, not struck when it is struck, nor lamed when it is lamed, yet it is as if they struck him in dreams, as if they chased him. He becomes even conscious as it were of pain and sheds tears, therefore, I see no good in this. Indra again returns to Prajapati and tells him his doubts, and after a long time is taught. When a man being asleep, reposing and at perfect rest sees no dream, that is the self. Indra has to be taught that the object of experience require a permanent subject by which they could be experienced. To enable Indra to realize that the self is the subject of all experiences, Prajapati employs the method of abstraction, which has its own advantages. Prajapati tries to bring out the absolute supremacy of the subject over the object. The truth of Yajnavalkya's statement that even when all objects are extinguished, the subject persists in its own light. When the sun has set, when the moon has set, and when the fire is put out, the self alone is his light. Indra felt that this self, freed from all bodily experience, from the shapeless mass of dreams, etc., this objectless self is a barren fiction. If the self is not what it knows, feels and reacts upon, if it is diverged from it and thus emptied of its content, what remains? Nothing, said Indra. To be free from everything is to be nothing. The self, he thinks, in deep sleep reduces itself to mere abstraction. There are no objects to be felt, to be known, to be enjoyed. This self appears to be absolutely unconscious, knowing nothing, feeling nothing, willing nothing. It is a zero, a cipher. I see no good in this. Indra shows the risk in conceiving the self as a transcendental one. The self must be shown to be the true life of the whole and not a mere abstraction. And again he approaches Prajapati and tells him his doubts. The teacher is now very much pleased with the ability of the disciple and now follows the real teaching. Dear Indra, the body is not the self, though it exists for the self. The dream experiences are not the self, though they have a meaning only for the self. The self is not an abstract formal principle of deep sleep too. The I, the body, the mental states, the presentation continuum, the stream of consciousness are all mere instruments and objects of the self. The self is the ground of waking, dream and sleep states, and yet it transcends them all. The self is universal, immanent as well as transcendent. The whole universe lives and moves and breathes in it. It is immortal, self-luminous, self-proved and beyond doubts and denials as the very principle which makes all doubts, denials and thoughts possible. It is the ultimate subject which can never become an object and which is to be necessarily presupposed by all knowledge. There is no second outside it, no other distinct term. The self is the whole. Indeed, am this whole universe. This fundamental identity which is the presupposition of both self and not self, is called the Atman. None can doubt its reality. The Mandukya Upanishads gives us an analysis of consciousness leading to the same conclusion. The soul has three conditions which are all included in a fourth. They are waking, dreaming, sleeping, and what is called Turiya. The waking state, outwardly cognitive, having 7 limbs, having 19 mouths, enjoying the gross, the common to all men, is the first fourth. The first condition is that of wakefulness, where the self is conscious of the common world of external objects. It enjoys the gross things. Here, the dependence on the body is predominant. It is called Vishwa. The dreaming state, inwardly cognitive, having 7 limbs, having 19 mouths, enjoying the exquisite, the brilliant, is the second fourth. The second condition is that of dreaming, where the self enjoys subtle things, fashions for itself a new world of forms with the materials of its waking experience, and is called Taijasa. In deep sleep state, unified, just a cognition mass consisting of bliss, enjoying bliss, whose mouth is thought, the cognitional, is the third fourth. The third is the condition of sound sleep, where we have neither dreams nor desires. It is called Sushupti. The soul is said to become temporarily one with Brahman and enjoy bliss. Here the self is called Prajna. The Mandukya Upanishad prints out that the highest is not this dreamless sleep, but another, a fourth state of the soul, a pure intuitional consciousness, where there is no knowledge of objects internal or external. It is called Turiya. This is the Lord of all. This is the all-knowing. This is the inner controller. This is the source of all, for this is the origin and the end of beings. The fourth is not that which is conscious of the subjective, nor that which is conscious of objective, nor that which is conscious of both, nor that which is symbol consciousness, nor that which is an all sentient mass, nor that which is all darkness. It is unseen, transcendent, inapprehensible, uninferable, unthinkable, indescribable, the sole essence of the consciousness of self, the completion of the world, the ever peaceful, all blissful, the one unit. This indeed is the Atman. It is symbolized by the Omkara with its parts of A, U, M, the waking, the dreaming, and the sleeping states. This self is the common ground of all these states. It manifests itself in these three states, and yet in its own nature it transcends them all. In the Kada Upanishad, the Atman is said to be the ultimate reality. The objects are the roads, the body is the chariot, the senses are the horse, the mind is the reins, the intellect is the charioteer, the ego is the enjoyer, and the Atman is the Lord sitting in the chariot. The senses are further compared to good and bad horses. The Kada further states that the senses are higher than the objects. The mind is higher than the senses. The intellect is higher than the mind. The subtle reason is higher than the intellect. The unmanifest is higher than the subtle reason, and the Purusha is higher than the unmanifest, and there is nothing higher than the Purusha, which is the ultimate end, the highest reality. Objects, senses, mind, intellect, reason all exist for the self and serve its purpose. It is the self that is immanent in them and gives them life and meaning. But these cannot be identified with the self, for it transcends them all. This is the crux of the teaching imparted to Nachiketa by Yama. The self is immortal, self-proved, and self-luminous, and can only be directly realized by transcending the empirical subject-object duality. The individual self or soul. The Upanishads make out that of finite objects, the individual self or soul has the highest reality. The individual soul is called Jiva from the root Jeev, which means to live. Both according to the cosmic and the acosmic views, the individual is not different in essence from the absolute spirit. The analogy of the two birds is given not to teach the Jiva and Brahman are different, but to show what make for their apparent difference. Two birds, akin and friends, cling to the self same tree. One of them eats the sweet berry, but the other gazes upon him without eating. In the same tree, the world tree, man dwells along with God with troubles overwhelmed. He faints and grieves at his own helplessness. But when he sees the other, the Lord in whom he delights, what glory is his troubles pass away. The Kanda Upanishad compares the Supreme Self and the individual soul to light and shade respectively. The Prashna says, from the Atman, this life is born just as there is this shadow in the case of a person. So is this connected therewith. Thus, it will be seen that what makes for the state of Jiva is the apparent conditioning of the self by a complex of body and mind. It is these latter that account for the soul's transmigration and travail. In the Taittiriya doctrines of Koshas, 5 sheaths of the soul are mentioned. Annarasamaya, which is the outermost sheath made of food through physical body. Pranamaya, the sheaths of vital air. Manomaya, the sheaths of mind. Vijnanamaya, the sheaths of intellect, and Anandamaya, the sheaths of bliss. In later Vedanta, the first is also known as the gross body, the next 3 constitute the subtle body, and the last is called the causal body through ignorance or nescience. These together constitute the empirical home of the soul. Being conditioned by these, the soul becomes the subject of experience and enjoyment. The Kada Upanishads compares the self to the lord of the chariot, the body to the chariot, the intellect to charioteer, the mind to the reins, the senses to the horses, and the sense object to the roads, and it adds that the individual soul as associated with the body, the senses and mind is the experiment or enjoyer. In all experience and enjoyment, the mind or manas of course is a central factor. The body and the breath, which are graded below manas, are respectively the physical basis of the soul's activity and enjoyment and the principle of life which makes for the animation of the body. The Vijnanamaya and the Anandamaya, which are higher than the Manomaya, represent the moral and the supramoral levels of experience. The soul in the view of Upanishads is not born with the body, nor does it perish therewith. The wise one is not born, nor does it die. This one has not came from anywhere, nor has it become anyone. Unborn, constant, external, primal, this one is not slain when the body is slain. What happens at death is only the disease of the physical body. The soul migrates from life to life, being conditioned by the cause of such migration through ignorance and by the instrument which enables it to migrate through the subtle body. The Mundaka Upanishad analyzes 3 states of existence of the Jiva: waking, dream and deep sleep. In the waking state, the mind and the sense organs are fully active and the Jiva is in contact with the external world. This state of existence is known as Jagrat and the Jiva in this state is known as Vaishvanasa. In the dream state, the sense organs are at rest, only the mind functions and this state is known as Swapna. The Jiva in this state is known as Taijasa. In deep sleep or dreamless sleep known as Swapti, both the mind and the senses are at rest. In this state, the Jiva enjoys bliss, but avidya is not destroyed, and in this state the Jiva is known as Prajna. Now, let us summarize what we have discussed. The Upanishads form the concluding parts of the Vedas. The problem discussed in the Upanishads as well as their unique style make them liable to many interpretations. The Upanishads develop the monistic ideas scattered in the Samhitas. Brahman and Atman are the terms used in the Upanishads to stand for the ultimate reality. The same reality is called from the subjective side as Atman and from the objective side as Brahman. The Atman is the transcendental background of both self and not self, and none can doubt its reality. The individual souls is called Jiva. The individual is not different in essence from the absolute spirit. Questions: 1. Explain the concept Atman. 2. Discuss the states of existence of Jiva. Now, there are some books for your reference. 1. C.D. Sharma, A Critical Survey of Indian Philosophy, Motilal Banarsidass, Delhi 2003. 2. Dr. S. Radhakrishnan, Indian Philosophy, Volume 1, George Allen and Unwin Limited, New York 1971. 3. Robert Ernest Hume, The 13 Principal Upanishads, Union Theological Seminary, New York 1930. Here we conclude this session. We will meet with another topic. Till then, bye.